All right, we're live. We're back. Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today, I'm joined with Andrea Bonila. Am I saying your last name right? Andrea Bonila.
Bonil.
Where you calling in from? You said you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereabouts in Mexico?
So we are based in Merida, and that is really close to Cancun,
Right.
really close to the sargassum problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about this conversation. I wanted to just kick it off maybe with share a little bit about, bioplaster, what you guys do there, but then we'll put that on ice and yeah, talk a little bit about your story and how you kind of landed where you're at right now in terms of your career. But yeah, do you want to share a little bit about your company?
Sure. So we are an R&D startup. So we focused in research and development. The expertise of the company is advanced biomaterials. So basically, we are a big lab based in Merida, and we develop several kinds of biomaterials for packaging applications and other biomaterials. And the idea is to build the expertise that it takes for us to go from the lab into an industrialization of these processes. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. We have actually developed a couple of biomaterials. We can talk about them later. And we're scaling up these applications.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I'm quite intrigued with the title that we came up with here as well. So I'm sure there's going to be lots to talk about. Cool, Andrea. So I guess let's start with your backstory. I'm quite interested. You grew up in Mexico. What were you like as a kid, and when did science first grab your attention?
So basically, my mom is a pathologist. So actually, she got me a lot into science. She would normally, if I found like the feather of a bird, she would be like, "Oh, we can look at it in the microscope." So that's how everything started. Basically, just looking at things in the microscope. Then I really liked physics at school, so I decided to go for something like science, and I decided to study nanotechnology. Yeah, I guess that's how it started. I really didn't want to get a job, so and I kind of liked research and development, so I thought maybe I should just go to academia and like pursue a postgraduate degree. And later on, when coming back to Mexico from my studies, there was this problematic in the Caribbean, and I thought maybe we can do research not from academia but from a private company, and that's how Bioplaster started.
Very interesting. What was that? I guess the incident. Well, I guess you know what, we'll get into that maybe further down. But I'm quite curious. So you know what? I wanted to ask you something. So you said you did nanotechnology. That's quite an unusual degree and quite an interesting one. What drew you to that specific field at such at the age of 18 or whatever it was?
So to me, it was sort of fascinating materials, and like trying to think that materials actually behave different at another scale. So I kind of wanted to understand that. And to nanotechnology, you can actually arrive from different areas. For example, in Canada, there was this. In Alberta, I actually wanted to study there. It was more based from physics. So that's exactly what I wanted, but it was a bit complicated. So I was lucky enough to be the second generation of nanotechnology, and molecular engineering is my degree at the UTLAP, at the university in Puebla in Mexico. I was the second generation, so it was quite novel then. But yeah, it's not a very common degree indeed.
I actually I was born and raised in Alberta, and I studied at the University of Alberta. That's where I did my degree, and I knew about their nanotechnology, and they're quite advanced. U of A is also really good at machine learning. I don't know if you've ever come across that, but in terms of research papers, when I was looking into it a couple years ago, they were like number 2 or something after the top, that Chinese university. It's yeah, I love that's cool. So your PhD, you did your PhD at Oxford, was it?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I studied at the University of Oxford physics, at the physics department. I was doing material sciences, but in a mixture of trying to understand the material from a physical point of view with a microscope called an atomic force microscope. We were measuring mechanical behavior of materials applied to medicine, for example, to tissue engineering and drug delivery applications.
and so at Oxford, you were building like nanowires as well. I was reading about this. So that there were 10,000 across a human hair. I mean, can you explain like what the research was in plain language?
Yes, sure. So we were developing an alternative to something that is actually commercially available, which are microbeads. These are normally like polymeric beads that have inside magnetic materials. So then for research, people can use them, for example, in magnetic tweezers, they're called. This is like sort of a big microscope that you can manipulate magnetic things with 3D magnets. So then researchers, for example, use these to attach, for example, cells like E. coli. They attach the cell, like the bacteria, to the substrate, and then a bead, a magnetic bead, to the tail of the bacteria, and then they make it spin to try to understand the mechanism of how the bacteria is going to move in an environment. So we were developing an alternative to these beads because these beads are normally spherical. And the idea was if we add the magnetic material into these polymeric beads and then we put a magnet on them, what we got is that instead of having a sphere, the sphere got elongated a little bit and it became like an ellipsoid, which was super interesting because then it could align to a magnetic field much faster and without the need of really big magnets. So we could actually reach much higher speeds than these other commercially available spheres. So yeah, that was one of my main projects, but then I had others working on this kind of materials for tissue
That is
engineering.
super. That's super cool. So I was reading you even crowdfunded part of your Oxford tuition, and I guess what did that hustle teach you about resourcefulness?
Yes, yes. Actually, I think I learned a lot how to fundraise, which was really important for the company for Bioplaster now, because like I had a scholarship from Mexico, but that covered like 60% of the costs, which for foreigners are much higher. So it was a bit complicated. I got a scholarship from my college at Oxford, but then I still needed, like, there were still fees to be paid. So yeah, I crowdfunded. It was quite good.
That's so clever. And then after finishing your PhD, a lot of people in your position, they would take like a comfortable research post somewhere. But I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit at the top of the call. But what was pulling you in this different direction?
So basically, I love research and development. I love being in the lab. Academia is a bit complicated, especially in Mexico. Funds are not that rarely available, and it's complicated to get a position. And it's also normally academia is more the teaching part, whereas what I love is actually being in the lab and doing the science. So I decided, well, maybe we can just do it from a private point of view. I didn't know what was I getting myself into because obviously research and development is one of the most expensive parts of a startup in the beginning. So it's complicated. It's not very VC friendly. They see it as very risky, but you know that's the expertise I could bring to the table, and I think the differentiator that bioplaster could have. So yeah, I just went for it, and now it's sort of working.
Who are your mentors or influences early, early in your life, like that gave you this kind of confidence, right, to think you could build something from scratch?
Well, it was actually complicated. Like there's always this, like, you know, going in the path, and then you think that is not enough, and so on. That keeps on happening along the way. But yeah, basically, like my mom has always been a really important figure for me. Like she she worked a lot for us to like have a really good education, and always helped us, like taught us, you know, to work hard to get what we want. So yeah, that's basically
And,
my mom.
and this story goes that the bioplaster started with a moment on the beach, right, in Yucatan. So can you tell us what you saw that day and what clicked in your head?
Yeah, sure. So, um, actually, straight back from Oxford, I was so desperate to get some sun in my skin. So, I went with friends to the beach. One of them is Daniel, which is now my associate at Bioplaster, and we were at Cancun. There was so much sargassum that it was like complicated, like this algae invading, you know, the beach. And then, like, you know, he said, like, do you think like this could be, rather than like rubbish in the beach, could it be like a raw material that we could use? And during the PhD, I worked with alginates and other biomaterials and extracts from algae. So I was like, oh, of course, like it's a brown algae. So we can actually extract alginates, which can be used then for biomaterials. I wasn't thinking specifically bioplastics, but yeah, that's how everything started.
That's fascinating. That's crazy. So when you first told people that you wanted to turn toxic seaweed into biodegradable packaging, like what was the reaction? Did people think you were crazy?
Yes, a little bit. Specifically, you know, there's so much of it, but people were always wondering, what if it disappears? What if it stops arriving? Um, and also, there's this difficulty, like, of brown algae or of sargassum, that it is a bioremediator. So it actually, because it's like going all around with different streams, it actually soaks up heavy metals, for example, arsenic, lead, and it makes it really complicated to work with as a raw material, right? Because now we want to extract several compounds. Some of them are going to go to the food industry. So we have to ensure that these heavy metals are not going to be present. Many people have used it for biofertilizer, for example, but then this contributes to high concentration of these heavy metals in the soil, which obviously is really bad for agriculture. So it is a raw material that is complicated to work with, obviously because it is not native, so you don't grow it. It changes, it varies depending on when you collect it. So the one that is collected in March is very different to the one that is collected in June, in terms of the extracts we can obtain and the quality of the materials we can obtain. So it's been a really long journey for us to like try to standardize our products and be able to utilize them as much as possible and give it to an extensive use to the algae.
That's super cool. So there's a stat that 14 million tons of plastic pollute the oceans every year, right? And something like 38 million metric tons of sargassum, right? And am I saying that right? Sargassum? Is that how you say it? that hit the Caribbean shore. So
Yeah.
when did you realize like the scale of what you were looking at? Like, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, actually, the pilot plant, well, the plant we're planning to bring to market next year is actually a really big facility, and we can only process 50,000 tons of dry sargassum per year, which Mexico has compromised to be removing from the ocean 50 million tons of sargassum per year. So we're actually taking a super small fraction, and this factory is like 2 hectares in scale. So it's a really big facility for a even bigger problem. So there's that much sargassum. That's why it's such a burden ecologically, and there's no one company that can do something about it. It takes several different ideas and technologies to actually give a use to this resource.
What was like one of the hardest moments in those early days of Bioplaster? Like, before you had funding, before you had a team, I guess like when you almost walked away.
Yeah, so basically, initially, it was really complicated for me to find this story, that we could sell. Obviously, I'm a researcher, so I didn't really know how to speak the BBC language. So for me, just saying like always very scientifically and always trying to obtain all of the data and that was really complicated. I was always trying to sell. We have very different products and projects. For me, that is the way to go because research and development is not linear. So you can start three things at the same time, and then they're not gonna move in the same direction and with the same speed. So that was always for BCs was always but you're not focused in one thing, you're diverging, and this is much more risky than it could be or should be. So in the beginning, it was really hard for me to get our first pre-seed round. But then, initially, Danny joined the team with a more business background, so that helped a lot. And eventually, we got funding, and everything started just running smoothly and faster from then.
How much have you guys raised to date? Is it public?
Um, Not really, but so we're now raising a next round. Like this would be the Series A to set up the bio-refinery. That is a $14 million round, and at our seed stage, we have raised a bit over $1.5 million.
So MIT Technology Review named you a pioneer and innovator under 35 in Latin America. 3M named you one of their 25 women in science. Like when those recognitions started coming, did it change how you saw yourself as a founder?
Not really. It didn't change. But they always give you the confidence. Like sometimes you just go on doing whatever you're doing, and you have mentors and so on. But it's always good to hear that you're going on the right path, and what you're doing is groundbreaking. So it's always really appreciated when these kind of recognitions come. And also it has been really good, to just give credibility to what we're doing. And as a female founder from LATAM, sometimes it's also challenging. So this is the kind of credibility that has been great for us.
So for people just, hearing about Bioplaster for the first time, what exactly does the company make today? And how does the bio-refinery process work?
Sure. So we initially, at the moment, we are developing different biomaterials. we are now upscaling the first to start producing. This is going to be for flexible packaging. I actually have some films here. These are films for bags, for stretch film, for palletization processes. We have different kinds of flexible packaging, primary, secondary, tertiary for bags, and so on. So this is the product that we're going to start producing in the next 2 months. We have the machine, it came in from China. It was really complicated, but now it's in our first trial to start producing and going to market, which is great. And we have other biomaterials that we're developing. For example, this one. This one is an alternative to styrofoam for shock absorbing purposes, also thermic isolation and soundproofing. So it can be used for different applications. It is really elastic, optimized for shock absorption. Because if you think of styrofoam, for example, styrofoam can be really dense, can be really stiff, but then if it receives a shock, it breaks. This one is thought to be elastic. So when it receives a shock, the energy is going to disperse within the material, making it much better for shock absorbing. So we can mold it into different shapes, from packing peanuts to stiffer plates to like wrapping for furniture, for example. And then now we are using a commercial algae extracts, and that we actually imported from China as well. But the idea is that for this next round, we are going to vertically integrate and use sargassum from the Caribbean, from Mexico. So for this process, this is, we take the algae, we actually have several providers we're working with, who dry it and grind it, and then it goes through a chemical process that I like to call, like, make an analog to a petroleum refinery, where you obtain several products from the same process. So it is the same with ours. So this process starts and we can extract, for example, colorants. Then it continues going. We can extract a compound called fucoidans. That is a food additive. Then we extract alginates, which is a raw material in food industry. It is an additive used from, to make denser yogurt, for example, and many other processes in food industry. And then with what's left, we can obtain cellulose and biofertilizer. Cellulose for paper industry and fertilizer. And that with these products, we can develop our bioplastics.
Interesting. You have over $5 million in letters of intent from IKEA suppliers, Great Packaging, and a couple other companies. What does that kind of like validation, like validated demand, mean for a deep tech startup like at your stage?
So that's been crucial, especially what VCs want is just to reduce risk. So this kind of market, the packaging industry, is a bit complicated. You need to have several kilograms of the material prepared for you to be able to do trials, like to test, for people to test and see if they like it and actually sign a contract. So getting to that stage from the lab is very complicated. So we have been working a lot with companies like IKEA to optimize our materials specifically for their applications, because there are so many kinds of plastics that depending on the application, you will need several different characteristics. It can be really stretchy, for example, for pallet wrap and so on. So working with these kind of companies that are looking for sustainable alternatives to decarbonize their production chains has been crucial. People can see the interest in our materials, and that's what the LOIs have been for, basically. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you were saying that you guys source like something like 100,000 pounds of sargassum annually through your partnerships, right? Can you walk us through that supply chain quickly, like from beach cleanup to finished product? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have different providers of the alginate of the sargassum. Sorry. Now hotels are putting like barriers in the sea for sargassum not to go all the way to the beach. So then they are collected in the sea, which is much better for us because that actually gives us much higher yields of the compounds rather than the algae going into the beach, stranding there, starting to rot, which gives the really bad smell that sargassum has. And that reduces the yields. Also, it's complicated to have the biomass like contaminated with sand. There's always plastic. So now it's collected in the sea. It is dried, sun dried, and then ground. That will be taken to our facility for the chemical process to start, where we will obtain all of these products. And then specifically the cellulose and the alginate go to our factory here in Merida, where we will be, in a couple of months, we'll start producing. We have a tunnel dryer now, came in from China. It was optimized. So this exists in industry. Normally it's used for food industry as well, but it was modified for our process. And it just goes through making a bit of like a rolls of the film, and then those go into bag making machines that are common in paper making machinery industry. Sorry, so those are the ones we are also will be using. We can also dye them, like print them, and so on with common usable machinery commercially available. And that's it. We'll have our really low carbon, really low water footprint packaging.
So beyond like foam and packaging, you're also developing biodegradable threads, thermoplastic pellets, hydrogels for agriculture, and even colorants. So how do you decide what product to build next?
So basically, depends on commercial interest and how fast R&D goes. For example, with the thread, we are really further along. We have really nice threads that could like have certain elasticity, like could be used in the industry as it is. But we haven't actually find the right partners for us to, do industrial trials, for example, of the threads to be able to like advance it further faster. So yeah, with the films, for example, we were really lucky to find a couple of interested people that just push the technology further faster. So that's why we decided to focus a little bit more our efforts. But actually, we work like a research and development group, where we have our lab meetings every week, and we all talk about the progress in our biomaterials, which is great because there are very different products, but then what we learn while doing this helps us to not do when we want to have this product, right? So it's just like a
Andrea, the paper that you mentioned at the beginning, what's that for? Like, what do people? Is it for like food, or is it for carrying certain things? Like, what would someone use it for?
the paper.
The first thing you showed, you just held up, not the blue sponge. Yeah, that. Like, what? No, yeah, the white one. What would it be used for? Like, what would be like an application?
So we are working with a shoe company. You know how shoes, when you buy them in the box, they come like wrapped in like a paper thing.
Yes, yes.
So this is one alternative. The client wants them to be like, they can be scented, for example, they can smell of whatever you want. They also could potentially, we can change how much humidity they absorb to keep the product intact, for example. And we can change, like, one of the most important things is the impact that we are measuring. So these are really low water footprint in comparison to paper in general, to craft bags, to glassine paper, the white one. So this is also interesting for packaging industry.
Cool. Well, I guess like help me land the plane. Like, where is Bioplaster in 5 years? What does the world look like if everything goes according to your vision?
So in 5 years, hopefully, we are setting up another biorefinery somewhere else in the Caribbean, not just Cancun. So we can be giving a use to more than 100,000 tons of dry sargassum per year, which would be great. And hopefully, there will be like at least the films, the foams, and the threads will be commercially available if projections they're pointing that way. So fingers crossed.
Good. Well, I'm super excited for you. Like, what a great story you have, and congratulations on all your success so far. And yeah, it seems like you guys are doing some great things. So thank you all for tuning in. And Andrea, hang back for like 1 minute. Let me bring this stream to an end. Until next time, everyone. Bye bye.